Welcome back, everybody, to the Deep Dive. This time, we're going to look at business strategy. Specifically, we're going to tailor it for all of you freelancers and solopreneurs out there.
Sounds good to me.
For this deep dive, we have your interview with marketing master Seth Godin.
This is going to be fun. Let's unpack his chat with Natalie Ellis and get you some real solid takeaways.
Sounds good to me. And I think a good place to start would be with Godin's take on the freelancer versus entrepreneur debate.
Yeah, for sure. It seems like everyone uses these terms as if they're like the same thing, but Godin points out a super important mindset difference.
Yeah, he uses the example of Natalie Ellis. She started out as a freelance PR consultant, basically trading her time for money.
Right.
But her goal was always to be a real entrepreneur, someone who builds a system that makes money even when they aren't working.
Exactly.
So how did that change in thinking, change the way we look at our businesses?
Oh, man, it changes everything from the clients you go after to actually scaling your offers. The entrepreneur is always thinking bigger picture. They want to build something that lasts, a structure that can run without them.
So it's like building a job versus building an asset that has value beyond your own individual effort.
You got it. And that actually leads right into another major point Godin makes, the power of becoming the best in the world. But there's a twist.
Okay.
He's not talking about ruling the world, but zeroing in on a really specific niche.
He uses that great example of becoming the only PR person orthodontists in New York City call. I get what he's saying.
Think about it. When an orthodontist in New York needs some PR, who are they going to call? The person who knows orthodontists or just some general PR person?
Specializing doesn't seem so limiting anymore, huh?
Nope, not at all. You can become a total expert in your field. That makes you way more attractive to the right clients and way easier to market.
So I'm seeing how smart this is. But how does this connect with Godin's idea about leaving money on the table?
Oh, that's a good question. It might seem a little weird, but to become the best at something specific, you often got to say no to things outside of that, even if those things look like they'll bring in a lot of money in the short term.
So you're saying you're choosing to double down on what you're really great at,
Yeah.
rather than trying to be everything for everybody.
Yes. And that's where leaving money on the table comes in. You're picking the work that really fits you and your long-term plan, even if it means passing on quick wins.
Godin also says that every yes means you're also saying no to something else. If you're committing to a project, you're saying no to a lot of other ones.
Right, and that's where strategic thinking comes in. You really have to be careful about the work you take on and who you work with. You need to be constantly checking if they fit with your overall plan.
He even uses the example of saying no to speaking engagements, even if they paid well.
Why?
They went against what he believes in, like he doesn't fly for work.
Yeah, it's a really good example of how your personal values should be a part of your business choices.
It's easy to get caught up in the rat race, chasing every opportunity that comes along.
I know, right?
Godin reminds us to think about what we're giving up and focus on what really matters.
For sure. And this brings us to another thing that entrepreneurs often struggle with, scaling their businesses.
It's easy to get caught up in just scaling for the sake of scaling, adding more people, more products, or more clients, just because it feels like that's what you should do. But Godin says that's not the way to go.
Yeah, instead of that, he says find your smallest viable audience. You want to resonate with the people who really get you and become your biggest fans.
So you mean it's not about getting to everyone, but about really connecting with those core customers who will, spread the word organically.
You got it.
Yeah.
And this leads us to something pretty surprising that Godin says, think carefully about social media. You'd think a marketing guru would be all about being on every platform, right?
Right.
But Godin actually says that if you're doing amazing work, you don't need to be everywhere. He doesn't even have profiles on a lot of big platforms.
Wow.
His thing is, your work should speak for itself. If it's great, people will talk. They'll share it, recommend it, all without you having to hustle for attention.
So instead of chasing followers, we should focus on stuff that people actually want to share because it helps them in some way.
Exactly. It's all about making work that people can't help but share.
And that brings us back to one of Godin's most impactful ideas, how he defines marketing.
I love this one.
He says marketing isn't just ads or promotions. It's how we present ourselves and how we exist in the world.
You got it. It's the whole package. The image you put out there, the values you live by, the effect you have on people, it's everything. Work, relationships, your personal brand.
When I heard that, it was like a light bulb went off. I always thought of marketing as this narrow, practical thing.
Yeah.
But Godin blew my mind.
Yeah.
It makes you think about how we're always marketing ourselves, even if we don't realize it. Everything we do sends a message.
Totally. So the big question is, what message are you sending? What's your story through your actions, your words, and even how you are online?
These are great questions to think about. But for those of you who are feeling lost or overwhelmed, where do you even start? Does Godin have any practical advice?
He does. In his book, he has some really insightful questions. These can help you get your strategy straight, know your values, and figure out who your perfect audience is.
He also talks about finding accountability partners, people who will help you, challenge you, and keep you on track.
Right, because you can't do this all on your own. Having people you trust, mentors, friends, or colleagues can make a huge difference.
So it's like having your own little board of directors, especially when you're starting out.
Yeah, I like that. But what about being original? I feel like a lot of creative people worry about that.
Yeah,
Not having original ideas.
definitely.
Godin actually has this freeing idea about originality. He tells people to steal, but not like actually plagiarize.
Yeah, okay, so what does he mean, steal?
He means to get inspired by people who are already doing what you want to do. Look at what works for them, how they do things, and then make those ideas your own, Fit them to your style and who you serve.
So instead of stressing about being totally original, it's better to build on what's already out there.
Exactly. Like, why try to reinvent everything when you can learn from the best? Even Godin admits he got inspiration from big names like Guy Kawasaki and Tom Peters.
Makes sense. It's like figuring out how successful people did it and then, like, doing your own version.
You got it. He even suggests looking beyond just your own field for ideas. Maybe there's someone in a totally different industry who's killing it. See what they're doing right and see if you can use those principles in your work.
So if you're feeling stuck, don't freak out.
Yeah.
Look around, find people who inspire you, and then make their ideas your own. Speaking of inspiration, let's go back to social media for a sec. Lots of freelancers feel like they have to be on every platform, constantly posting, chasing trends.
Oh, I know. It can be so draining.
Yeah, it can really distract you from actually building your business. But Godin has a different view. Right?
Totally. He says you don't need to be on every platform, chasing every new thing. Instead, he thinks if you focus on doing great work, people will notice. They'll share your stuff and talk about you without you having to beg for attention.
So instead of chasing followers, we should be creating things people genuinely want to share.
Exactly. He calls it making intrinsically shareable work. You want to give people something so good, so helpful, that they can't help but tell their friends.
It makes me think about what I share online. It's usually stuff that really clicks with me. It makes me think or laugh, or it's info I want to pass on.
And that's the kind of stuff Godin's talking about. You're not tricking some algorithm, you're tapping into how people naturally connect and share.
It's about making a real impact. Which takes us back to Godin's definition of marketing.
Right.
He says marketing isn't just ads. It's the whole story we tell about ourselves, how we present ourselves to the world.
Absolutely. It's how we show up, the promises we make, the things we value, and the impact we have. It's in our work, relationships, everything.
Yeah, it's not just something you do, it's who you are.
Right. And so the question is, how do we get better at this? How do we tell a story that people get, make real connections, and do something good?
Well, Godin gives some advice.
Yeah.
In his book, he has questions to help you figure out your plan, what you stand for, and who your audience is. He also says it's important to really know yourself.
For sure. Take the time to figure out your good and bad points, what you're passionate about, and what your purpose is. Like, what makes you, you? What's important to you? And what mark do you want to leave on the world?
And don't be afraid to get feedback. Ask people you trust, friends, colleagues, mentors, what they think about your work, how you communicate, how you come across. You don't have to do this alone.
Totally. Find a buddy or a group to keep you accountable and support you. They can make all the difference in staying focused and motivated.
Now, for those of you already creating content, podcasts, blogs, newsletters, whatever, Godin has tips on making it more engaging and shareable.
Yeah. One thing he emphasizes is storytelling. People love stories. It's how we connect with things on an emotional level, so they stick with us. So when you're making content, think about how you can bring in your own experiences, stuff people can relate to, or inspiring examples.
Don't be afraid to be real and honest. Share your ups and downs, what you've learned. People like realness.
And make sure your content actually benefits your audience. Ask yourself, what problem am I solving? What do I want people to take away from this?
Give them a reason to keep coming back and to tell others about it. And speaking of giving people a reason to come back, let's talk about dealing with all the opportunities, requests, and distractions that come with being a freelancer.
Oh, yeah. It can get crazy. You feel like you're pulled in every direction, especially at the beginning. Godin has a simple idea. Focus on serving the right people and politely decline anything that doesn't fit your goals or what you believe in.
He even suggests making a personal policy, like a clear set of rules about what's important to you and what you won't do.
Right. Like you said earlier, Godin doesn't fly for work. That might seem limiting, but it actually helps him focus on things that match his values and lifestyle.
By setting those boundaries, you can avoid feeling overwhelmed by choices and stay focused on what matters. Every yes means you're saying no to something else, so choose carefully.
And talking about choices, Godin has this interesting idea about limitations being opportunities.
That's kind of the opposite of what we usually think.
Right. We see limitations as things that hold us back. But Godin says they can actually push you to be more creative, resourceful, and focused. He uses his no-flying policy as an example.
Yeah, that limitation actually opened up new doors for him. He had to find different ways to speak to people, connect with audiences, and pick projects that worked for him.
Exactly. So instead of fighting those limitations, see them as chances to do things differently, stand out, and make something truly unique.
What limitations are you facing right now in your work or life? How can you see them as chances to grow and be innovative? The best entrepreneurs are often the ones who can turn those challenges into wins.
And that brings us to something super important for success in anything: adapting to change. Godin says, real opportunities happen when the world changes.
So we got to be ready to adapt. But how?
By keeping our eyes open and our ears to the ground. What's happening in our industries? What new stuff is coming out? What are people talking about?
So we should always be looking for those little signs that something big is about to change.
Yeah. Godin uses podcasting as an example. When podcasts first came out, it totally changed things. Anyone with a microphone could suddenly reach the whole world.
And Godin's always been ahead of the game with tech and new platforms. He was all over blogs, online courses, all that stuff early on.
Exactly. That's why it's so important to always be learning and trying new things. Don't be scared to experiment, even if it seems weird. You never know what might happen.
This kind of goes back to Godin's stealing idea, right? Not copying, but taking inspiration from people who do things differently and making those ideas your own.
For sure. And remember, you don't have to do this alone. Godin believes in the power of people working together. Surround yourself with folks who inspire you, challenge you, and have your back.
So find your people, whether it's online communities, mastermind groups, or just meeting up. Connecting with like-minded people is super valuable for support and inspiration.
It's like having your own personal cheering squad for your freelance journey.
Yeah, I like that. Well, I think this brings us back to the big ideas we've been talking about today. Specializing, making choices, and marketing yourself in a way that stands out.
Totally. From figuring out your niche and saying no to the wrong things to telling your story and rolling with the punches, Godin gives us a ton of great advice.
He does.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, let's go back to that question that Godin asks. Real opportunities happen when the world changes.
So what's changing in your world right now? What new possibilities are out there?
What can you make, build, or do that will actually matter? This is your chance to be curious, to adapt, and to leave your mark.
Great advice to end on. As always, thanks for listening, everybody, and we'll see you next time on The Deep Dive.